Hi, I'm Scott. This is my channel. I call it CineRam. Big movie fan and big comic book movie fan. Some of them, anyway. I've actually, over the past few months, actually been spending a lot less time watching YouTube videos. So I've missed out on a great deal. I'm spending a lot more time on Facebook in fan groups, particularly, sci-fi and comic book movie and comic book related fan groups. On Facebook, I'm a member of like 3 different comic book and comic book movie groups. A lot of people sort of complain about how the members tend to post and discuss the movies much more than the comic books. I believe the term is casual, a person who does that instead of being a hardcore comic book reader, casual. And I'm a casual, definitely. My first love has always been movies. But I actually got curious about some of the books that were being discussed. And I, over the past couple months, have picked up a few, so I thought I'd show them off, if anyone is curious about that kind of thing. One of the books that really intrigued me, because I saw basically a splash page that had been digitized and put up, was Jimmy's Bastards. And so I picked up this collection right here. This is the first few issues of this series. This character, Jimmy, is sort of a James Bond type, debonair, playboy, secret agent who's super good at wasting the bad guys, with nothing more than a golf ball or what have you. The splash page had a big reveal, which I thought was hilarious, and it's not in this particular book. This is the first volume, basically, of Jimmy's Bastards collection right here. So that reveal, the issue with that reveal is not in this thing right here, but this still is a very entertaining book right here. I won't get into too much about what it's about, except that, he's, a lot like James Bond, the fact that he has slept with quite a lot of women over the course of his career, which spans decades, and the consequences of that are now coming back to haunt him, which is funny in a lot of ways. Very, very funny. Another book which kind of intrigued me just because of the cover art was something called Dark Fang. I haven't seen a lot of people posting about this, at least not in the groups that I belong to. It is a Image book? Yeah, it's Image. And so the first 4 issues of this are out. This is a really interesting story right here. The main character is a woman who is turned into a vampire, and she doesn't really want to have anything to do with people, so she decides to live under the sea. Her best friend becomes a shark, then what happens is this sort of illustration right here is her neighborhood, her undersea neighborhood, where she is living peacefully and feeding off of the sea life and not bothering any humans, becomes the victim of an oil spill, and so she has to basically leave the ocean and then seek out the humans that are responsible for this. It becomes her mission to make them pay. But she's been undersea for like 100 years, so she's really unfamiliar with modern life and modern technology and what have you. She ends up basically seeking out the CEOs of oil companies and a lot of politicians and just wreaking havoc. I'm 4 issues into this. It's a really good book. I'm really enjoying it quite a lot. And that's the first issue right here, and this is the second issue. And this is the 3rd issue, and this is the issue which just came out a little while ago, the 4th issue right here. Yeah, I'm definitely planning on keeping up with this series, which is not something that I usually do. I mean, keeping up with comic series. I'll read, like, collections and things like that. Another series which I'm keeping up with, but I haven't started reading yet, is Doomsday Clock. This is a really big deal right now, of course. Watchmen, of course, was the 80s comic series written by Alan Moore, then there was a series of books published last decade, or maybe it was just earlier this decade, I forget exactly, called Before Watchmen. The main characters, guys like Rorschach and Silk Spectre and Dr. Manhattan and Ozymandias and the Comedian are all the main characters of Watchmen, and they got basically a series of books devoted to what was happening with them before the events of the Watchmen book, and now this is called Doomsday Clock, which also has the Watchmen characters interacting with the classic DC characters like Superman and what have you. At least I think it is, because, point of fact, I actually haven't read any of this yet. The book started out being a monthly series, and then now it's bi-monthly, which means there's only one issue every 2 months. So the next one doesn't come out until mid-March. The middle of this month, as opposed to having come out in February. So that's a little disappointing, but what I was planning on doing is basically waiting until I got 6 issues and then reading them all in one sitting. Rather than, comic books, for me, they're a little frustrating because they're so short. These seem a little bit more robust than the typical comic book series. There's just more material in it. But I've got 3 issues so far. I was only going to wait until I got 6 issues before I started reading them. And the 6th issue won't come out then until July, yes. So that's a ways to wait before I actually start reading this. But this is the first issue right here. And the second issue, yep, this is the second issue right here. And the third issue right there, yes. So I've got the 3 issues right there, and I'm going to wait until I get 6 issues before I start reading it, just because I think I'll enjoy it more that way. Another series which is underway, as many of you are aware, there's a pretty big comic book movie coming out in May. So there's some comic books that are devoted to that, I don't know if you could call them prequels, but they're sort of leading up to it. Infinity Countdown is what it's called, in the lead up to the Infinity War movie. This one is devoted to the character of Adam Warlock, who doesn't have anything to do with the new Infinity War movie, as far as I know. So that's kind of a standalone, I think, and then we've got Infinity Countdown Prime, and they're both labeled #1, but I think this one is actually going to be like the series. So I've got the first issue of that, and I'll be picking up the others, and I will be then reading them before the film comes out, however many there are. I guess there's one more due out this month, and then April, so I guess maybe it's just 3 of them before the movie comes out, because the movie is due out at the very beginning of May. We'll see about that. I thought that I'd also I enjoy reading the original comics that the film is adapted from, but I'm going to wait until the movie comes out first, because there's plenty of differences, and I just figure it would be nice to enjoy them on their own. So I've got the collection here of the Infinity Gauntlet issues, and I've got the collection of the Infinity War issues, which is even bigger. In the book, of course, Infinity Gauntlet comes before Infinity War, as far as the storyline goes. But if they do an Infinity Gauntlet movie, it will come out after Infinity War. Or it might be called something completely different. I have no idea. It'll be coming out a year from this May. That's when Avengers 4 comes out. I'm sure you're already quite familiar with what's generally happening with that. So that's my little thing right there. I also wanted to talk a little about, since I've been away from YouTube for a while, I haven't been watching, it's not like I never watch YouTube, but, I don't check my subscription box for new videos by the people that I'm following very much. And there's a bunch of people that I more or less know personally, who also make videos like me, that have been posting recently, and I haven't really been keeping up with their channels, I'm afraid. Guys like Michael, whose channel is called Great 1951, James, his channel is called DVD Collector 1974, and Ian, whose channel is called All About Movies. He's got a brand new channel and has posted some new videos recently. And I just last night actually saw a video that they posted a couple weeks ago, James and Michael anyway, about this new series that they're doing. They call it a Weekly Chat. And so I wanted to sort of chime in on that. And that is the topic that they were discussing in the videos that I watched was people's personal feelings about actors, actresses, and directors. They were sort of addressing what happens when an actor that you've been following and are fond of is the subject of a really bad scandal, or what happens when they die, or even when they hit certain milestones that are publicized, like when they get married, or when they get divorced, or when they have kids, or what have you, how that affects us as viewers. Two of my favorite actors for a really long time were Kevin Spacey and Reese Witherspoon, and their public images have gone in completely opposite directions. Kevin Spacey is now a total pariah. He was completely edited out of the latest Ridley Scott movie and replaced with Christopher Plummer, as I'm sure you're aware, because of the scandals involving stories about him hitting on 14-year-old boys. and being really sort of grab-assy with people on the films that he worked on and the series House of Cards. Apparently he's a real nightmare to work with, and that's very disappointing. I kind of wish I didn't know about that, because I've enjoyed Kevin Spacey's work for so long, and to learn what an incredible scumbag he is just very disheartening. I made a video about this a couple months ago when the scandal first made news. Yeah, it's just very disheartening to think that this guy who's been in some of my favorite movies ever, like Glenn Ross in Seven and LA Confidential, is just a terrible, terrible human being. On the other hand, Reese Witherspoon, who I've enjoyed for a really long time, probably my favorite actress ever, she has, her persona, basically, her public image has really taken a sharp turn upward, because she's become a big advocate for victims and people who have been, need financial support in litigating their harassment cases and what have you. She's been in a bunch of movies that I didn't like, particularly the last one, Home Again, is a pretty dull movie. But she was in Big Little Lies, which is some of the best work she's ever done. And there's a second season of that on deck, and now she's really getting into producing other series. She's got a new series with Jennifer Aniston that's being worked on right now. I've always really liked her a lot, and now she's become really sort of public advocate. Oh, also, she's got a movie coming out this month with Oprah Winfrey, and Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma. It's a big new movie called Wrinkle in Time, so I'll definitely be seeing that. I see everything that she's in, and so, that's exciting. But yeah, I hear a lot about, I don't read the gossip sites as much, but when something really big happens, like a scandal like that, it makes news everywhere. And so I've really sort of become, I end up questioning, whether or not I should still be fans of certain people. Like the story that broke about Tarantino treating Uma Thurman badly. There was a mishap involving a driving scene, and Uma Thurman really kind of messed up her neck and knees. And there was one interview that she gave in which she sort of accused Quentin, who she considered a friend, of working against her. He was withholding, basically, the footage that they had shot when the collision occurred. And he kept, keeping away from her and being really cold to her, and that was a tough time for her because they had been friends for such a long time. She blames Harvey Weinstein more, but she also seemed to blame Quentin as well. And then she did another interview where she sort of walked that back and explained in more detail what happened. Didn't seem to blame him as much. But after I read that first thing, I was just like being really dramatic about it. I wanted to come home and turn on my video camera and take all my Tarantino DVDs and just snap them in half and throw them in the garbage, just because I was just like, no more Tarantino for me ever. And then I read the second interview that she does, or the second op-ed that she wrote, or whatever it was, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Maybe he really was, I don't know, it sounded really bad at first, but now it doesn't. I really don't know. I just don't think that there's any kind of excuse there's no excuse for that kind of behavior, no matter how good the artist is and how good their work is. Guys like Polanski and Woody Allen have gotten praise for decades, despite the fact that they've done some really terrible things, and it's hard to excuse it. One of the guys, I think James, was in his video was talking about, I don't care about the personal life so much. I'm just basically a fan of the movies, and as much as I would like to just like completely put Kevin Spacey out of my mind for good, there are some movies of his that are my favorites ever, and I think that just like throwing them away and never watching them again it doesn't really affect, if I've already bought the disc, I've already paid my money for them, so it wouldn't affect anybody really if I stopped watching those movies. It would only really affect me. But those films were made by a lot of people besides Kevin Spacey, the writers, the directors, the other actors in the film, and so I really am sort of reluctant to just like toss them all. Because, like I said, there's some of my favorite stuff. Seven is a movie that I was completely blown away by when I first saw it. I just adore that movie. I've adored it for so many years. And Kevin Spacey is like the serial killer in that movie, so that just makes me hate him even more. I don't know. But then there's LA Confidential, there's American Beauty, there's The Negotiator, which is a really fun film. And of course Glengarry Glen Ross, which is the first movie that I saw him in, and he was fantastic in that, and that whole movie is great. Usual Suspects, of course. I just rewatched The Usual Suspects a couple years ago. Or maybe it was last year, I forget exactly. I did it for another YouTube series. And then the whole news comes out. I'm just like, my goodness, I can't even, look at this guy anymore, I ended up finishing the last season of House of Cards, just because I knew that I had read that the next season of House of Cards, he was out. He wasn't going to be in the series anymore. So I'm like, well, at least I want to watch the episodes just to find out what happens, so I know where things are when the new season starts. And Robin Wright is the main character, and Kevin Spacey isn't on the show anymore. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen the show, and you don't want to, I can tell you that Kevin Spacey's character is President of the United States, and Robin Wright, of course, is the First Lady. But there's a scandal, so he has to resign the presidency. And Robin Wright, of course, is not only the First Lady, but also the Vice President, and so she gets sworn in as President. And so in the last scene in the series, Kevin Spacey tries calling her, and she ignores his call. And he speaks directly to the camera, as he tends to do on the show, and he says, if she doesn't pardon me, I'll kill her. And I'm like, okay, that's his last scene in the series. We are not going to hear any more from him at all. They'll talk about him a little bit, presumably, but Spacey himself is out. He is not going to be on the show anymore, and the show is going to be entirely focused on Claire, Robin Wright's character, being president, and dealing with all the crisis, and then, ignoring her husband or dealing with whatever fallout from a scandal. So that's good. I wanted to, just get those series out of the way, get those episodes out of the way, so that I knew what was happening at the start of the new series. A lot of issues with actors saying the wrong thing, apparently. Actors who haven't done anything wrong but just say the wrong thing or say it the wrong way, they end up getting in lots of trouble. And I just kind of wish that I didn't know about any of it, because I just want to be able to enjoy the films. But I don't think it's a good thing to bury your head in the sand. It's not a good thing for me to bury my head in the sand and go, I don't care, how good or how bad they are, I just want to watch the films. And I think that when you do that, you end up kind of supporting people that you wouldn't if you were aware of the kind of behavior. Of course, I wasn't aware for many years, wasn't aware of Kevin Spacey's personal life. I'd read little rumors about him and things like that, but it was mostly about how, he, was a gay man rather than a straight man, and I didn't know if any of that was true, but he was still awesome as an actor. And now I learned so much more terrible things about him that I'm just going, darn it, this really sucks, can't enjoy anything that he's in anymore, but, maybe in a few years I'll get over it and go, who cares about him? The movie's still good, and I'll end up watching him again. I don't know. One thing's for sure, I'm definitely going to keep watching Reese movies and Reese TV shows, because she's totally awesome, and I'm a fan of hers for a really long time. So yeah, the personal life thing, wish it wasn't a factor. I really wish it wasn't. But when you learn so much about guys like Spacey and Woody Allen and Polanski and other people, Brett Ratner, and apparently Bryan Singer's done some really terrible things as well, involving young people. Yes, he got kicked off of his new movie. It's a movie about Freddie Mercury. Rami Malek, who's the lead on Mr. Robot, playing Freddie Mercury. And I don't think Bryan Singer was directing, he was producing or something like that, and he's out. They don't want him there anymore. And, the same thing with Harvey Weinstein. He's out too. Never liked him much. But then again, he's just a producer. He's not really an artist, not an actor or writer or director, just a salesman, pretty much. So, fuck him. That's one thing I thought would have been great. I was thinking back to Gwyneth Paltrow getting the Best Actress Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. And at this point, Harvey Weinstein's reputation was probably very well known. But he's so powerful, And that's the one thing that's so great about Twitter and about social media, Instagram, is that people can put this stuff out there and let everyone know, hey, this person's terrible. I know it's a little bit like, convicting someone before they're even charged. But when, this many people, when Harvey Weinstein has, screwed with the careers of these many actresses and other women in the industry just because he wanted to have sex with them and didn't like the fact that they turned him down or whatever. Everyone from Rose McGowan to Mira Sorvino, Salma Hayek, Ashley Judd, and who knows how many other people that aren't, well-known names. It's really hard to just say, well, we should prove it first, yeah, it's a sticky territory, but it would have been so great. I just thought it would have been so great because at this point he really was giving, Mira Sorvino a hard time at the time that Gwyneth Paltrow went for Shakespeare in Love. I just sort of imagine a scenario where she invites other Oscar winners like Mira Sorvino on stage with her who have won Oscars for their work in films that Harvey Weinstein has produced, and then called him out basically from the stage. Harvey Weinstein, thank you so much for making this movie, and fuck you for everything else. Man, that would have been, incredible if she had done something like that, or if someone had done something like that. Just let him know he's a sexual predator. Just wanted you to know, okay? Don't put him on a pedestal anymore, okay? Let's deal with this now. Because it's gone on for so long. It's gone on for so very, very long, and so many women have been intimidated into not talking about it. But now they're all sharing their stories with each other, and so now they're like, time's up! We're coming out, we're not going to be scared anymore, Same thing with Reese. She never really dealt with Harvey Weinstein, but she had, harassment issues, a director when she was 16 years old. Oh, man, I learned about that. I'm just like, man, I want to kill that guy. I just want to kill that guy, okay? You screwed with my favorite actress, you're dead. But I don't even know who that guy is, so he's in the clear for now. Anyway, so yeah, just some thoughts for me on that. But yeah, as far as the other thing that they were touching on, James and Michael, was what happens when someone you're really fond about dies. And there's only been a few of them that I'm really sort of fond of, like Philip Seymour Hoffman. But, I figure any day now we're going to hear about Donald Sutherland or Clint Eastwood or Morgan Freeman, the guys who are really getting up there in years. Jack Nicholson, he's not really acting anymore because he has memory problems. And it's just a matter of time before we lose some of these legendary people that we're all so fond of, that I'm so fond of. Not to mention, just younger guys suddenly passing away. Patrick Swayze, Bill Paxton, oh my God. Love that guy, just love him. And now he's gone, he's not around anymore. Glenn Headley too. Glenn Headley, just, that was sudden, wasn't it? They weren't really, they're still middle-aged. So yeah, I mean, there's been a few that I went, oh God, that's terrible. Alan Rickman, no more Alan Rickman performances. That's a real shame. Yeah, so yeah, sometimes I think, oh gee, that's too bad, especially if it's like a sports guy or a music, David Cassidy, actually. David Cassidy passed away recently. I work at a hotel. He stayed in the hotel. I got to meet him one time, which was great. But I'm not a David Cassidy fan. So when I heard he died, I'm just like, oh, that's too bad. But it wasn't like, oh my God, it's so terrible, David Cassidy. But when people I'm really fond of, when it happens to them, when they're gone, that's very, very sad for me, because I'm like, no more work from them. No more Philip Seymour Hoffman movies. That's just awful. Yeah. So yeah, I feel bad about it too, as I'm sure many people do. So yeah, I just sort of want to catch up, make a video, sort of catch up with things like that. I've got a series that I'm doing, the March Monologueness. I'm starting it again. I'm going to be doing 6 movie monologues, memorizing them and reciting them on camera. At least 6 over the course of March, and if I have time, I'll do 2 more. I picked 2 more sort of backups, but I'm gonna do 6 because I tried doing like 10 a couple years ago, and I only got 4 done, and I couldn't even get them all done in March. So that's coming up. That's coming up on my channel if you want to check that out. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon, hopefully. Later.